Welcome to the People of Animal Health podcast. The host of our podcast is Stacy Purcell. Stacy is the leading executive recruiter for the animal health industry and the veterinary profession. She's the founder of Therio Partners and the Vet Recruiter. Stacy has placed more professionals in key positions within the animal health industry and the veterinary profession than any executive search professional. And along the way, Stacy has built relationships with some outstanding people who are doing incredible things to make a difference. The People of Animal Health podcast features industry leaders and trailblazers who have made a significant impact or are making an impact in the animal health industry or the veterinary profession. Stacy chats with them to learn more about their lives, their careers, and the unique and interesting things that they have done to contribute to the animal health industry or veterinary profession.
Hello, everyone. On today's show, we are talking with Dr. Ed Kanara, who is a legend in the animal health industry. Dr. Kanara is a 1979 graduate of the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine and a diplomat of the American Board of Veterinary Practitioners certified in equine practice. He is currently the managing member of the Kanara Consulting Group, which he founded in 2007. His group focuses on management consulting and leadership development with clients that include the human and animal health industries, research organizations, academia, veterinary medical associations, and private veterinary practices. Prior to establishing Kanara Consulting Group, Dr. Kanara spent 17 years with Pfizer Animal Health, now Zoetis, in various senior executive positions while leading various business units and teams in both operations and research. Before joining Pfizer, he was in clinical veterinary practice for 11 years and owned and operated a multi-person equine practice in the Chicago area. Dr. Kanara has been actively involved in organized veterinary medicine, serving on the board of directors of the American Association of Equine Practitioners, Sponsors Council of the National Commission on Veterinary Economic Issues, and the Dean's National Advisory Committee for the University of Illinois CVM, to name a few. In 2013, Dr. Kanara received the President's Award from AAEP. He has also been a published author with book chapters, refereed, and lay publications, as well as an invited speaker at national and international meetings and at the Wharton Business School of the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome onto the People of Animal Health podcast. And how are you, Ed?
I am doing well, Stacy, and thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Ed, I know that you have had a ton of success in your career, but I'd love to start off at the bottom in the very beginning of your career. What was your life like growing up, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in a very blue-collar environment outside of Chicago, Stacy, so we didn't have a lot of material things, but my parents taught me great values and a really strong work ethic. I was the first one in my family to attend college, for example, and I put myself through both undergrad and veterinary school with a combination of athletic and academic scholarships. And in the summer, I worked railroad constructions. And during my entire college career, I always had to have additional jobs.
Wow. And when did you first figure out, Ed, what you wanted to do professionally?
You know, I always smile at that question because I was so fortunate that I never remember a time in my life I didn't know what I wanted to do. Even back in grade school, when someone would say, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never remember saying anything other than I want to be a veterinarian that takes care of horses.
Wow, that's so impressive that you knew from such a young age, not only that you wanted to be a veterinarian, but very specifically an equine veterinarian. Tell us the story of your veterinary career. Give our listeners an overview, if you will.
My career can really be broken down into three very distinct and separate phases. For the first 11 years, I was in clinical practice, and I took care of primarily thoroughbred racehorses and performance horses. The next 17 years, I worked in industry for Pfizer Animal Health. And then the last 14 years, I've had a consulting group. And all three very different components of animal health and the use of my veterinary degree, but all really rewarding in and of themselves.
Ed, could you tell me more about your Pfizer career?
I'll be glad to, Stacy. Pfizer gave me lots of opportunity, and I ended up leading several teams and business units through the years there in both operations and research. But I really started out as an equine technical services veterinarian, and then moved up through veterinary operations to eventually be their chief medical officer in the U.S. and then globally. I also assumed responsibility there for drug safety and pharmacovigilance, and then had a great opportunity along with our head of marketing and head of sales, and we were given joint responsibility for the entire companion animal business. My last several years there, I was responsible for all of vaccine discovery research and then most of our pharmaceutical discovery research effort as well. I'll always be indebted to Pfizer for all the growth opportunities they gave me. For example, I was even fortunate enough to be their media spokesperson for over a decade. And so I got to do lots of very interesting things that I would have never envisioned happening when I was in veterinary school, because at that point I thought I would never do anything my entire career other than taking care of racehorses.
And Ed, I know that not only did you have a successful career, but you also have a very successful family. You've raised 6 kids, and I know how hard it is to balance career and family. How were you able to do that?
Is actually the reason that I left clinical practice and went to Pfizer was a quality of life, family related type of decision, in that I went from working literally 7 days a week to working 5 to 6 days a week. And when I reflect back, I feel probably my greatest accomplishment in life is that, along with my wife, we raised 6 really successful and productive and good human beings. And I think that, a focus on family and being able to do that well, and a focus on your career and being able to do that well are very consistent. It's just that we really have to make a very thoughtful effort to be able to do both. And it's possible, but it doesn't happen by accident.
And that I have 5 kids, and I'll never forget when I first met you many years ago. I said, Ed, I have 5 kids, you have 6 kids. What is some advice you could give to me? Because your kids were older and my kids were still pretty young in elementary school, I think. And I said, when does it get easier? And you said, this is as easy as it will get. I remember you saying that it gets harder as the kids get bigger with the types of decisions that they have to make later in life. And that's proven to be correct.
Yeah, I always say when someone has young kids and they're talking about the challenge, I'll, instead of saying it's going to get better, I say, well, this is the easiest time you're ever going to have, because as they get older, the worries get greater and the problems sometimes get bigger. But at the end of the day, it's I know I can speak for myself and say it was probably the most wonderful thing that's happened to me, and I know that you feel the same way.
I do. We were just talking about my daughter driving home 8 hours today from college, and praying that she makes it safe and sound. Ed, what's been the most surprising thing to you during your career in the animal health industry?
I think one of the things that amazed me when I got into industry was how genuinely dedicated and passionate that people that are involved in the industry are about the well-being of animals. You would hope to see that and expect to see that from veterinarians, but I've been impressed that the animal health industry is a wonderful place. Everyone from the sales reps to marketers to folks in all aspects of the industry, I think they have a real common denominator in that they genuinely care a lot about the animals.
Yeah, that is so true. That's what attracted me to this industry were the people and how genuine and caring the people are in the animal health industry. And I know we've seen many changes in the industry over the years. Ed, how have you seen the industry change during your time in the animal health industry?
You know, there's those obvious changes, consolidation, of course, and an ever decreasing number of the corporate players. Years ago when I came into the industry, people would go to work for one company and usually stay for years. And, now you need a scorecard to keep up with all the changes. At the practice level, of course, we're seeing, a very similar situation with the corporate consolidators. And it's, I think, becoming increasingly challenging for independent practices to be able to compete. On a personal or on an individual basis, I think that there's a much greater emphasis now on quality of life and work-life balance in practice, especially at the practice level, and I think also at the corporate level. And when I started, veterinarians were expected to work very long hours and just be happy to do that. And I think there's been some very positive changes now that have allowed people to improve their quality of life.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear that that often, in my line of work too. That is a trend now, the quality of life, and like you said, there are so many more opportunities now for that that didn't exist before. What does your crystal ball say about the future of the animal health industry?
I'm both an optimist and a realist, I'd like to think. And I think the future is really promising. Um, Even when we see historic economic downturns nationally, or, this last year is a great example of just all the chaos that and unpredictability that occurred. At the end of the day, people love their pets. And especially sometimes in more challenging times, that human animal bond becomes even more important. And most people make decisions and prioritize their pets' needs sometimes over their own needs. So I think that's about who we are as people. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I think you're going to see some macro changes in terms of, for example, I think the demand for animal protein is going to decrease, which is going to impact certain elements of the profession and the industry. But historically, if you look at the veterinary profession, it's been very resilient through the years, and the profession and veterinarians have had to redefine themselves several times. And so I think, again, as a profession, I think things are just fine. Currently, there's a very significant shortage of veterinarians in really almost all aspects of practice. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So again, I'm pretty bullish on the future of animal health.
That's really promising to hear that. Ed, today I'd love for you to share with the listeners about the kinds of projects that you are up to.
Yeah, well, so, now as I said, I spent time in clinical practice and then in industry with Pfizer. And for the last 14 years, I've had a consulting group and love this part of my career as well. And so, as usual, currently I'm working with several clients on their strategic plans and their business plans. I'm particularly excited right now. I've got a One Health initiative that I'm working with a university and some other interesting clients. And if it turns out the way we hope, it's going to have a very positive impact in both human and animal health. I've always enjoyed leadership development and mentoring and coaching, and I'm busy with that with several clients. And our consulting group specifically carves out time for pro bono project work and cause-based initiatives, or for nonprofits that we support, and that has become more important to our group over the years.
That's so good. I know that that is very important to you, and appreciate all the work that you're doing in the nonprofit space. One question I like to ask is, because I know that successful people are often proactive, and Ed, you come across as a very proactive person. I'm curious, how do you typically organize your day, especially the first few hours of the day, and what time do you typically wake up?
Well, this goes under the category of old habits die hard, Stacy. For many years, I was in training barns or on the backside of a racetrack or in breeding sheds, literally before 6 a.m. So I'm still a very early riser. I begin every day with a workout and then coffee. And while I'm having coffee, I'm going through my phone and I'm organizing my thoughts and my day, and then it's ready, set, go. So I do things in a fairly methodical and process oriented manner.
Well, I also know that many successful people have some daily habits that have helped them to achieve success. And Ed, I'm curious, what are some of your daily habits that you believe have allowed you to achieve success?
I'm very checklist and process driven to stay organized. Otherwise, I find that if I don't do things in a somewhat similar way, day in and day out, things can be a bit chaotic. Philosophically, I follow there's a former coach at University of Notre Dame, football coach Lou Holtz, and he had three tenets that he lived by that I try to mirror every day, and that is, number one, you treat people the way you want to be treated. Number two is you do every job with passion and to the best of your ability. And three is that when you're faced with ethical dilemmas, you always know what the right decision is. So do it. It may not be the easy decision, but I try to follow that. And as I think back, those were really the same types of lessons that my parents taught me about values and a work ethic. And I think, from a business standpoint or even a personal standpoint, success is very much correlated to earning the trust and establishing the credibility with your clients or the people that you interact with. And so just simply trying to do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, I think is incredibly important.
Well, that's some really good advice, and you're right. That's so important. The trust and establishing credibility, and I know that you've done that, and I know you're a man of high integrity, and I'm curious too about mentorship. I know that having a good mentor is important for many people's success, and I'm curious what mentor has made the biggest impact to you in your career.
It's really a kind of a tough question for me because I have had so many great mentors at different stages of my career and life. Even, I reflect back on athletic coaches that I had in my life. But professionally, I would say that M.B. Teglin, who I believe was probably the greatest racetrack practitioner ever, and I had the privilege of working for him. He taught me how to examine a horse. he taught me that you've got to practice the highest quality medicine that you can. And he would give the same care to a backyard pony or a multi-million dollar racehorse. That he taught me. You give every patient and every client and every patient your best effort. And the other thing that was very interesting to watch him in action was that he had a very, very successful practice, very successful large practice, but he always adhered to the highest ethical standards. And so financial success can be and should be very consistent with with maintaining the highest ethical standards. And from a style standpoint, he was a very powerful presence, demanded respect from everyone, but yet he had a very soft-spoken manner about him, and he was very kind to people. And all of those are lessons that have influenced me, and that I have tried to follow through the years.
Yes, and that's really really sound advice. And I'm curious, is there any advice that you would give to the younger version of yourself?
Yeah, it's probably we don't have time in the podcast to cover it all, Stacy, but I think I would, maybe the easiest concise way to say that is I would probably be less intense and demanding of myself, but more importantly, I'd probably be less intense and demanding of others if I had a do-over.
Mm-hmm. We find that some successful people tend to have idiosyncrasies that are actually their superpowers. And I'm curious, what idiosyncrasy do you have?
It's funny because I've been asked this question before, and I'll answer it the same way I did then, and it's that I absolutely have a superpower, but it has to stay my secret. And again, if I started to list all my idiosyncrasies, I don't think we'd have enough time. So I'm just going to have to keep those all secret myself.
So it'll remain a secret. It'll remain a mystery, but you obviously have one. And then also, Ed, what message or principle do you wish you could teach everyone?
I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to answer this question, Stacy, because I feel really, really strongly about this. And that is the importance of living with an attitude of gratitude and acknowledging that we all have a responsibility to help and mentor and develop others. When you think about it, no successful person has gotten there by themselves. And sometimes when we get to certain positions, we can forget that. And, an easy way to think about this, and this is something that I do with my executive coaching and leadership development, is I say an easy way for me to think about this is that we all have a responsibility to leave things better off than we found them. Whether that's the schools we attended, our community, our workplace, and really importantly, the people in our lives. So, a lot of this is the golden rule, but there's simplicity and truth in that golden rule. And I think if we focus on the importance of helping and developing others, especially professionally, it's just win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you for sharing that advice with our listeners. And some of our guests say that they've had a key book that they have read that really helped them to approach success or even change their mindset. Ed, do you have a key book in your life that has impacted you the most? If so, I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, I try to stay kind of up to date with more of the evolving and current leadership philosophies and and approaches to business and so forth. But I keep going back to really a fairly old book that's tried and true in my opinion, and that's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Successful People. I again, I love the simplicity of his approach, and he buckets things really nicely for me and easy for me to understand, and I use a lot of his advice to coach.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good, and very, very popular book. Ed, you've got the mic. What is one thing that you want to share with our listeners of the People of Animal Health podcast before you drop the mic today?
Stacy, I think probably my final thought would be that I feel just very fortunate to be a veterinarian and to be a part of the animal health industry. Um, because all of us that are involved in this, and again, whether it's as a veterinarian or as a veterinary technician or in industry or in your job where you're finding people for all of these various professions and so forth, is that the bottom line is that doing what we do, we have such an opportunity to have a positive impact on the lives of all of the species of animals out there and their owners. And so the last thought I guess I would have would be that I would really encourage anybody that's interested in animal health to pursue it. Because I think there is nothing but positive things that can happen to you and by your work to animals and pet owners and animal owners. And this industry can just be so rewarding on so many levels. So I'd like to leave you with, again, both what I believe is a realistic but optimistic thought.
Well, the future is bright for the animal health industry, and there is a tremendous opportunity, as we can see from Ed's career, and he's very positive about the future of the industry. And Ed, I want to thank you for being here on our podcast today. I enjoyed having you as our guest today on the People of Animal Health podcast.
Thank you, Stacy. It was my pleasure.